I'm always looking for ways to show my cat how much I love her. And with Fancy Feast gems, I can pamper her whenever I want with a savory gravy on top of a gourmet mousse pâté. The pyramid shape makes serving simple, so all I have to do is peel and plate to make mealtime feel extra fancy. And with 2 entrees in every pack, it's easy to turn every day into the extraordinary. Fancy Feast gems.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Tom, what is your non-negotiable?
Can't chew with your mouth open. That is something that I just can't deal with. My sister growing up, she's my twin, so I was inseparable. She chewed with her mouth open, and it's a non-negotiable for me, Kevin.
I have no table manners. My non-negotiable is I will not wait in line for brunch. This is Pack Your Knives. I'm Kevin Arnovitz.
Tom Haberstroh.
So, Tom, today my understanding is we are going to discuss episode 2 and 3 of season 3 of The Bear, 2 completely different episodes structurally in terms of tone. One of the great things this show does is it gives you a lot of different kinds of episodic television, and no 2 episodes are the same. They have different approaches. This is not, this show does not pay any sort of credence to formula. And and these are 2 very, very different episodes of the show.
Yeah, I think the second episode, so this one's called Next, is kind of like, all right, we're back in the kitchen. We're going to discuss or set the tone of where everybody's at following that crazy season finale where Carmy's locked up in the freezer on opening night. Episode 3, Doors, is very different, but I think I enjoyed Doors more than I enjoyed the episode 2, Next. And I think part of it is because I think my least enjoyable parts of the show are in the kitchen itself. And once we start moving out of the kitchen, the actual kitchen, I feel like we're growing as a show. That I feel like I'm learning new things about the characters, and there's new threads that we're pulling on. Whereas I feel like a lot of episode 2, where they're arguing at the kitchen counter and discussing about, retreading old ground with the argument between Richie and Carmy, but at least we got a couple new things in there that it didn't feel like we're going back to the same well. So I appreciate it. I think I enjoyed episode 3 more than episode 2. What say you?
I would say definitely for that. Every workplace show has this decision to make, which is, do you go home with the characters, right? And I mean, the best example on sort of the extreme end would be, like, say, Law and Order, right? Granted, it was sort of it is the procedural of all procedurals. It is truly the most formulaic show, and that is its great strength. But like, you could know Lenny Briscoe for years, and like, you don't even really know if the guy has a kid or like what he does with his free time. Or do you do the workplace stuff and then do go home? I mean, a show I absolutely love right now and can't wait to come back is Industry, right? And, it's sort of, in my theory of Industry, is sort of the opposite of your kitchen phobia, which is I am most interested in Industry when they are on the floor of the investment bank. And anytime you go home with Harper and she's dealing with her brother's addiction or whatever it is, or whatever bullshit in her personal life, or on the phone with her mom, it's sort of like, let's get back to the investment bank. So I think, it's this great, again, one of the things the show does so well, The Bear, is just, it sort of balances these inherent tensions in a show, which is how much time do you want to spend in the kitchen at the workplace, and how much time do you want to delve in to the lives of these people. And what this show essentially does is actually, in some ways, when you go home, you're not really so much going home with the characters, you're going into their path, right? And I think that's a very interesting way to, quote, go home with the characters, which you do want to go home a little bit, like, because you do want what is informing their behavior in the workplace. Like, why do these people act this way in the kitchen? Well, to understand that, you need to understand what are they like away from the kitchen, right? You don't really know your coworkers until you go out to dinner with their spouse or partner, or go drinking with them, or, see them in the wild. And, this is something this show is going to do. And it's very interesting. The two episodes we're going to review today really, never exist much outside of the kitchen, except for kind of what you would call the teaser or the intro to episode 3, which is the funeral for Marcus's mother. And we'll talk about that a little later. But I love the kitchen. I think the kitchen captures the intensity of the show. I'm with you in the sense that I have a very tortured relationship with with Richie. And it's not about likability or not likability. Like, I do think, and I refer to it, I think, on our first episode as sort of the Punch and Judy routine. There's some great stuff in there. There is the busting balls kind of thing. And I will say that episode 2 did reach the limits of my patience for the friction between these two characters.
Yeah.
I'm happy to explore tension between two characters ad nauseum. There's nothing wrong. I think they need to find new modes of the tension.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that's sort of like, how does this manifest itself? And maybe it is outside or, one thing I thought was so interesting about the finale, Tom, was, you're obsessed with our family. I loved, that was such an interesting characterization from Carmy of Richie. Like, it's almost, you're obsessed with our family. I'd like to explore that a little bit. And I suspect we will. This show, again, is doing a lot, but I'm with you in the sense that I think I found the recursive nature of the Richie Carmy ball busting arguing to be a little rote at this point. I don't know that there's new ground being explored. And look, maybe the rebuttal there is, hey, that's the nature of toxic relationships like this. Actually, you never actually restart. You just play the same frigging argument over and over, and you have that same argument every single day.
Yeah, and I find myself thinking back of my own family. And again, this is a family drama, right? This is a show about family and the scars. The episode opens with Claire looking at Carmy's hand and trying to get the metaphor of him having this scar that cannot heal, and that he grabs something so deep and it just never heals. You get that with the arguments with Richie, is that we're doing this again. Like you said, it's rote. We're doing this again. And the reason why I think I'm drawn towards Richie as opposed to Carmy is, like, I feel like there's more depth with Richie. He has a family. He's a divorced father who has these really tender moments with his, as we saw in Fishes, when he's caring for his wife who is sick with their pregnant. She's pregnant, and she's, going through a lot of pregnancy illness at that moment. And he's a totally different person when he's around her. And then there's this growth of he's trying to shed, like a snake or a lobster, trying to shed that blue collar asshole part of him in the next episode of Forks. And we get that kind of growth. And I feel like there's more ground there. I feel like there's more to explore with Richie. He's an outsider. He's not part of the family. Why is he called cousin when he's not part of the family? There's so much more here with Richie and layers to him that I'm drawn to him in ways that I don't feel the same way about Carmy, which is why I think it is, the non-negotiables scene is fascinating for me, because doesn't it reveal that when your non-negotiables is written by one person, and one of those non-negotiables is vibrant collaboration, the hypocrisy, I'm glad Sydney pointed it out repeatedly in this episode, is that, like, oh, you redid the menu without talking to me? The communication was supposed to be a big part of this, and you're not communicating. And by the way, on this list is that you're supposed to be vibrantly collaborating, whatever the fuck that means. Richie calls that out. And I'm struggling with Carmy as the foodie Tom, or the chef Tom Thibodeau. That's what I'm struggling with, is this joylessness and this, if I spend more hours in the kitchen and if I redo the menu this many times and just try to outwork everybody else, then people will rise to my level. And there's this joylessness, and there's that super soaker thing in the next episode that Richie brings in. And I don't know. It's, I think, instructive to me that when Carmy starts having good feelings or good memories, that's when the panic attack happens, is when he's starting to have these fond memories I used to have over in Copenhagen or in the fields. And there's Claire, and he has a panic attack because he can't let himself feel joy. And that is really frustrating for me.
Do we think that the fond memories are actually fond memories, or are they selective snippets of a time when he actually was, frankly, just as miserable? But we have a tendency to handpick very selectively those memories where I wonder how happy he was in Copenhagen, right?
Well, he was smiling.
He's smiling, right. Like it's a singular memory, but it's funny, is he telling himself, God, it used to be great there, and I'm going to import all of the things that govern that kitchen here because it made me happy. But is it possible Carmy is if we want to draw on another NBA coach, is he Larry Brown, right? Is he only happy when he's miserable? And I'm kind of fascinated with only happy when he's miserable guys. And actually, I would suspect maybe Thibodeau might be like this as well. But that's always the question: is Carmy capable of happiness? And I think some in his life would argue, yeah, and he's actively working to prevent that. And then I think the others would say, no, actually, he might be incapable of happiness. I mean, the non-negotiable thing is interesting. In some ways, even though she doesn't say a lot other than fire Capitelli in these two episodes, I do think that Sydney, both in 302 and 303, really establishes the fulcrum. And I mentioned this a little bit the other day, and to your point about, in some ways, she's never going to be Team Richie, right? Because Richie is obnoxious, and he doesn't really respect the craft of cuisine, even in his emergence from the education he got at Ever, in the Forks episode, and he really gets it now. I think he gets hospitality. I don't think he gets chefing.
The scratch and sniff Somm book.
Exactly.
You didn't think that he respected the craft of Somms when he does a scratch and sniff? No, I hear what you're saying.
Not exactly. No, in some ways, it reminds me of this great line. One of my favorite movies is Robert Altman's The Player, right? And the smarmy Peter Gallagher comes in one morning to their big meeting when they discuss all their projects that they have in development at the movie studio. And, and his whole thing is like, why are we paying these writers so much? I'm going to open the newspaper and, here's a story about an earthquake in South America. We could get look, it's triumph over tragedy and man versus nature. And we can do this ourselves, right? And then Tim Robbins says, yes, if only we can just figure out how to get rid of the directors as well, we're really onto something, right? And I think to a certain extent, Sydney's never going to be on Team Richie because he's obnoxious and because he doesn't really understand, the hospitality is here to facilitate the food, not the other way around. On the other hand, we now see just her profound, not just skepticism, like terror, realizing that she is now in the Carmy vortex. Mm-hmm. And that vortex is sucking her up, right? The fact that he had the chutzpah, like overnight, essentially, to completely overhaul her menu without consultation, right? And she's trying in a very measured way to protest, knowing that if she protests the wrong way, Carmy's just going to completely go. She's almost dealing with like a terrorist, right? And you have to be really careful in the way you talk on the phone about the ransom. And she's kind of approaching it that way, you can see. Now, when Carmy and Richie start arguing, she's totally happy saying, both of you shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But and then Carmy, of course, throws hey, there's a piece of paper as a DocuSign waiting for you about ownership. And on one hand, you can see her being flattered. Like, I didn't realize I'd have a piece of ownership. Of course, I'm thinking about like, oh yeah, by the way, that means you're liable for all of this debt that is being accrued through $11,000 butter orders, right?
I had a little different reaction to that. I agree with you, but I thought of Peggy and Don when he says that's what the money's for.
That's what the money is for. The Peggy-Don parallel between these two characters is great. The one place I would disagree with you, and I think it's one of the beautiful things about the show, is, to me, the hallmark of a great show is you and I can watch the same show. You and I have much of the same taste. We have the same favorite shows. You're wanting to see a little more of Richie. You sense there's more depth there. I still love a brooding, tortured, taciturn protagonist, right? I love the Don Drapers. And I think Carmy, the parallel in those two shows is really interesting. They're both kind of creative endeavors that have to pay great attention to the economic realities of the creative endeavor. He is this sort of brooding introvert who is genius, but the part of the genius is kind of destroying the people around him. He's got this deputy who is just dignified and talented and the ultimate outsider, whether it's demographically or in terms of sensibility or classical education or whatever it is, right? And Sydney, to me, is sort of just so rich in the way that Peggy Olson is so rich. But to me, it's funny, these two episodes really establish Sydney as sort of the vantage point. I mean, she's the one who has to kind of deal with Tina, who frankly, just despite her best intentions, just is not ready for prime time, right? Ibrahim kind of breaking the cork. I mean, she, like, in some ways, it's so interesting how Sydney is truly being established as kind of our eyes and the fulcrum, I think, in this ecosystem that is the bear and all the various factors, right? Like, she probably fundamentally agrees with Richie on Carmine's obstinance, but she actually still feels herself, as Peggy does with Don, like, this is the one creative person here that I want what he wants creatively. Like, we're the only two real, everybody, Marcus, I think you could argue is getting there as a pastry chef, but they have this connection. It is based on a combination. I mean, there are very few people in the world who have Carmy's talent, his vision, his understanding of the craft, and she's one of those people. And I just love, the one thing I do love about these two episodes is she is kind of emerging for me as what you called kind of the soul of the show, the fulcrum, the plate, our stand-in, our set of eyes processing this. And we can also see her just being sucked into the vortex.
Yeah, for sure. I love the scenes with her father, because I've had those moments with my father where he's trying to give me advice and I'm just not hearing it and not seeing the road bumps or the road signs, warning signs. And, Natalie is urging her, just sign the agreement. There's a moment where it's like, I think back to that conversation she had with one of her mentors at one of her old restaurants, that when she went out and Carmy was like, hey, go eat food. We need to go explore food and do some research out in the wild. And so she goes to one of her old restaurants and talks to one of her old mentors. And I think it was him, the older guy, who was like, do you trust your partner? And what we're seeing is Sydney doesn't trust, not fully, at least, Carmy. It's the first night you're remaking the menu when this is supposed to be a collaboration, when we're doing this together, my menu. And you didn't tell me anything about it. The communication isn't there. And so you're seeing that Sydney is really struggling, because on one hand, this is everything she ever wanted. And on the other, is she tying herself to a vortex of depression and self-destructive behavior, and that's a real tension, of course. And I'm glad we have Sydney, because I think Carmy needs someone to call him on his bullshit that's on his level. He respects her in a way that he doesn't really respect Richie. And that's why Sydney's words carry a lot more weight. And I kind of felt, I was like, yes, when she said, I feel like I've been here for an hour, I burst out laughing, because I was like, I, as a viewer, feel like I've been here for an hour when they're yelling like that. I don't want any more of this, but I understand that setting that in episode 2, after the meditative dream sequence of the premiere, we kind of have to remind everybody, Carmy is almost in a worse place than he was. He's now reverting back to his worst, as Richie might call it, lizard brain, where it's like he needs to be fully consumed in being the excellent craftsman and chasing that excellence and perfection. And if this is going to be a partnership, things have to change. It can't be that way. And Sydney's calling him out on his bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, vanity is such a fascinating part of kind of creative aspiration, right? Because, I mean, the crux of everybody's apprehensions, and really what comes to fruition in episode 303, when the kitchen gets backed up, and is this notion that he needs to put out a new menu every day, right? Is it because all right, let's break this down, right? Like why? Like, if we asked Carmy, well, why? And, he would give you some platitude, probably. Well, that the greatest restaurants really challenge themselves. They do the unthinkable, right? They do the things that people think are impossible, right? Rooted in sort of self-help books and that language. I mean, the irony of a guy who, he's playing as much of this crap as anybody, despite the kind of played for comedy, all the Richie things. Well, you're not integrated. It's actually Carmy who really subscribes to these ridiculous platitudes that somehow it can't be a fine restaurant if you have recurring dishes that appear on the menu every night, right? And I think he would probably tell you that, but it is like, that is the root of their troubles, right? Is this guy truly wants no permanence in his life. In some ways, I want a different menu every night is basically a variation of what he yelled to Claire in the freezer, which is, like, I don't want to be encumbered to anything, right? Like, I don't want, changing a menu. I mean, that's what he does in his life, right? I mean, Claire's on the menu. I mean, Claire's the signature dish in his life as they enter the family and friends thing. Like, she's this constant. She has potential to be there for him every single day and night. And he's a guy who doesn't want any of that. He doesn't want any permanence in his life other than his arm tattoos, right? Like he wants no permanence. And that's what this new, we made 9 great dishes last night. Fuck it. None of them are going to remain. We'll never make another one again, right?
Which is the irony of having a non-negotiable list in the first place, to have 27 non-negotiables but hate permanence. It seems kind of a dichotomy there.
Exactly.
Or some sort of hypocrisy there. And that what I think about him is, so there was this great restaurant that opened up here down the block. James Beard Award nominated chef, farm to table, and he had a new menu every day. And the food was very veggie focused, very farm focused, where every night you could have, like one night you could go on a Tuesday and it does asparagus 13 ways. And you love that dish. And then Friday, it's tomato done 13 ways. And my neighbor across the street, who's like a professional pit smoker, like Carolina barbecue guy. And he's like, sometimes, man, you just want a double quarter pounder with cheese. It's like, you go to restaurants sometimes to be surprised and sometimes to be expanding some of your expectations on what a meal can be. And other times you have a favorite dish at a restaurant that you want to keep coming back for. That Caesar salad at Senora Martinez, right?
Oh, the deconstructed Caesar at Michelle Bernstein's restaurant.
Right. You keep coming back for that.
I cried the day she took that off the menu. I actually confronted her about it.
Michelle Bernstein there's some mainstays on menus, right, Kevin? When you say, hey, Tom, you should go, when you're in Chicago, you got to go to this restaurant and order this. But what if it's not there? Don't you like having a certain thing on a menu? And this is a little astray from the show, but just in general, the idea of revamping your menu every day, to me is, I don't think it works. I don't think it's a good idea. And while I responded to my buddy across the street being like, yeah, but every day that I go into that restaurant, it's a new experience. And I feel like that's fun. And he's like, yeah, but you kind of, if you love a dish, don't you want it to stay there and that you can keep coming back to that dish? And he's right.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a happy median, but it's clear that happy being the operative word here is Carmy almost, it seems like so many self-destructive and self-saboteurs, self-destructive people and self-saboteurs, is almost creating the conditions for unhappiness, right? There's only unhappy mediums. But it's really ultimately an exercise in kind of creative vanity in addition to self-sabotage, right? It is, well, why should there be a new menu every night? Well, because it's to show off.
He said they want it that way.
No, it's not for the customers. Again, to your point, I think first of all, nobody eats at the same place every night, especially a place like that. That's an event restaurant. I mean, it is clearly for vanity. It is to say, so he can say he did. It is in pursuit of the star, which is an interesting aspiration in and of itself, because, we established, I think I forget when it was last season, but that was sort of a bullshit pursuit. He didn't care about such things.
Yep. It was Sydney's idea, and now it's his idea. Right. And she's like, if this is what it takes to have a star, I don't want that. Or she hasn't said that, but you can feel that she's like, okay, you're co-opting my goal.
Hello, listener. It's Producer Maze here to talk to you about Quince and their cookware. Cooler nights mean cozy meals at home, and Quince's cookware has made fall cooking so much more enjoyable. Their pieces deliver the quality and performance of luxury brands, but at a price that makes sense. And they look gorgeous on the stovetop, too. No matter what item you need to complete your kitchen, Quince has you covered. With 5-ply stainless steel pots and pans, nonstick skillets, chef-quality knives, and even ceramic bakeware, which is perfect for cozy casseroles or Sunday roasts. And when you look at these prices, you might think, how is Quince doing this? How do they deliver high-quality items similar to high-end brands that are half the price? Well, let me tell you, they partner directly with ethical top-tier factories to cut out the middlemen and pass the savings on to you. And it's not just cookware. I got myself some bath sheets. That's right. When you're a tall man, you have to use bath sheets, not bath towels from Quince. It's like drying off with the cloud. It's incredible. Upgrade your kitchen for cozy fall meals with premium cookware from Quince. Go to quince.com/dings for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/dings, DINGS, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/dings. Hello, listener. It's producer Maze here to talk to you about Kindred. Now, close your eyes like Owen Wilson during a job interview and imagine a way to travel that feels personal, comfortable, and connected without the price tags and the sterile feelings of hotels or short-term rentals. Now open your eyes and stop using your imagination because Kindred has made it very real. That's exactly what they do. Kindred is a members-only home swapping network. It's not a hotel. It's not a short-term rental. It's a smarter way to travel where each stay feels like home. Here's how it works. With Kindred, your home is your ticket. You earn credits by hosting fellow Kindred members, and then you use those credits to stay in over 220,000 homes in more than 100 cities worldwide. There are no hotel costs or rental fees, just the credits that you've earned. Every stay comes with white glove service, 24/7 trip support, and $100,000 in host protection. Make it easier for you to travel and enjoy yourself and not worry about details. I've used Kindred and I found an amazing home for a weekend getaway in an idyllic location with amazing views and great ambiance. It had everything I needed. And the best part was, it cost me $0. So apply now at livekindred.com and use code DINGS to join for free. Plus, you'll earn 5 nights of travel credit just for signing up. That's right, that's 5 whole nights for free at livekindred, KINDRED.com, code DINGS, DINGS, livekindred.com, code DINGS.
Listener, listen up. This is important, okay? I'm going to try to save you some money here. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. You may think like, oh, that's bad. No contracts. No monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. Here's why I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for $15 a month. You heard that correctly. $15 per month. Ditch overpriced wireless and the jaw-dropping monthly bills. And of course, there are all these hidden fees and stuff, but at Mint Mobile, plans start at $15 per month. All the plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text. You're not doing like weekend and nighttime minutes or anything like that. And it's delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone. Don't have to get a new phone. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. I switched months ago. People have asked, did you actually switch? Yes, I actually switched months ago, and I don't know what to do with all this extra money. I've cheated the system here. I've rigged something. This is an Ocean's 11 situation where I'm stealing wireless from Mint. That's how good a deal it is. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/dings. That's DINGS. That's mintmobile.com/dings. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
See, to me, Kevin, Carmy is a control freak. He's a tyrant. Sydney's calling him on that, and no one wants to work with that guy. And that's really, at the end of the day, what is so difficult about being part of a team is if you are working with a tyrant, you have to lead. You have to have people rowing in the same direction with you, which is why, you know, the final scene in episode 2 is so interesting to me. Is who did Marcus say, take us there? Who did Marcus say that to? That was to Carmy. He's not telling Sydney, hey, take us there. Take us to the pinnacle of what this restaurant can be. And it's almost blowing up Carmy's ego and like, yeah, I'm going to fucking do this. This is my restaurant. This is my vision, the bear. And Sydney, you're just coming along for the ride. And Sydney, God bless you. Cause that is a tough person to be partnered with.
Marcus is emerging as an interesting character in the ecosystem, right? Because he is the true believer in a way that Sydney knows just from experience and having been around high-end cooking long enough, in high-end restaurant work long enough, that she understands the hazards that he is creating, Carmy. Marcus is the rose-colored believer, right? Like he actually, without irony, at the end of the episode, as you say, can go to Carmy and say, just take us there, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. And it is so interesting because he both is the conclusion. He's the last person to speak in episode 2, and obviously the first person to speak in episode 3 at the funeral. And the funeral's so interesting to me. And again, one of the reasons I love how they're billing Marcus, because what we're basically seeing now is a contrast in grieving between Marcus's grief and Carmy's grief, right? And it is truly a contrast, right? Because Marcus had years to prepare. I mean, his mother was dying for years. He was by that bedside every night he was in town, right? Whereas Carmy didn't have a second. I mean, he gets the phone call, the dreaded phone call, a brother who he's not expecting to die for decades has committed suicide. But the contrast is much deeper, right? Like Marcus is committed to the process of making peace with the misfortunes, whether it's just obviously the death in and of itself, but even the way he talks about, hey, I wasn't by her bedside. I was here. I was here in the restaurant when she died. And I think, when Carmy and others hear that, it's like their first instinct is, God, that's terrible. You're right. And he's like, no. No, this is like, that's essentially that's the cosmos telling me something, right? I was supposed to be here if I was here, right? This is how he's making peace with these misfortunes. Whereas Carmy, how is he making peace with the misfortune of Mikey's death? Well, I mean, on a basic level, I think we would say he's making peace by turning the beef into the bear. Like, that is it, right? Like, that's how I'm going to make peace. If you ask Carmy, like, well, how do you make peace with Mikey's death? I'm going to make this place into, that's what he's telling himself. Now, I don't know if it's ever going to do it for him. I mean, the question we'd love to ask is, in a universe where, let's say, the bear does become a success, right? It becomes, just a signature restaurant in Chicago and the nation's cooking scene. And if you ask Carmy after that happened, after he gets his precious star, hey, have you made peace with Mikey's death? I wonder what he would say. Would the emergence, would the bear's success be the equivalent of making peace? But the thing that I think is most interesting about this, though, Tom, is like for Marcus, the process of grieving and making peace with the death of a loved one it's by and large a spiritual task. It is a spiritual journey. For Carmy, it's entirely material, right? Making this restaurant a success, right? That's how he's going to make peace. That star is how he, I think, is convincing himself he'll make peace to the extent that he ever can. And it's just the interesting contrast between Marcus's grieving and Carmy's grieving was so well drawn. I love the funeral scene. And I really, again, I think I love the way Marcus is sort of merging, especially as Sydney has moved in season 1 from, wow, you're the chef I want to work for and you can make this happen. And let's talk about menus. That's fire, chef. Like, I mean, you remember where Sydney was as recently as early season 2, where she's really taken. I mean, she kind of comes in hat in hand, like, can I work for you? Mm-hmm. And now she's moved to, oh, fuck, what have I gotten myself into with this sociopath? Well, we need someone new to be the old Sydney, right? And Marcus has emerged as the take us there bear. Now, obviously, he's doing it much differently than Sydney ever did. They're two completely different temperaments and different people. But it's interesting. Marcus is the new, wow, bear, you can do it. Like, you'll lead us there in the ways, because Sydney's had to abandon that because she now knows that he's completely insane.
But don't you think part of that is Marcus is kind of a specialist? He's a shooter off to the side, and he's not having to lead the offense in the same way that Sydney does. Like he has a rosier outlook on achieving this pinnacle in the culinary world and excellence, but he's not in the trenches with Carmy in the same way that Sydney is. And there is allusions to that where it's like, what does he do here? Like, he's a dessert guy, and like he's off to the corner doing his own like experimenting. And I think that part of the reason why Marcus is a lot more optimistic about the future of the bear is because he's not having to lead the offense or guard the opposing best player. He's kind of off to the side. And so Marcus, what they're doing is the contrast, of course, of like him talking to Carm, and Carm is like, hey, Don't bottle it up, deal with it. And that's my advice.
Which is hilarious because that's exactly what he didn't do, right?
And Marcus says, did you do that? And he said, no, I wish I did. And so my mother passed away almost a year ago, and my father wasn't there for it. And, you know, she had been sick for 6 years, and my dad was at her bedside every day, 24/7 for years. And when she passed, he was at home and she was in the hospital. And I felt horrible for my father because he expressed to me like how much he felt like he needed to be there to make sure everything was okay. And I told my dad, I was like, I think in the same way Marcus thinks, I think that was meant to be. I don't know if you could have handled that moment. And maybe she knew that like she didn't want to burden you with that moment. And it was her time to go. And it's so much better for me, at least, to rationalize it in that way. It's more comforting because it's ascribing the horrors of death in a cosmic way, that there's a larger plan here, that my mom decided to go when my dad wasn't there because she didn't want to burden him with that. And it brought peace to me, is like, okay, that happened. It feels better to look at it this way. And that's a choice for me to look at it. Of course, I don't know why it happened then, but I just know that like being there or not being there, it's a whole lot better to wrap your mind around the randomness and the horrors of death, to just, I don't know, keep it moving in a sense of like Marcus is making a decision. Like, you know what? I was here at the restaurant, and it's a lot more productive for me to view that as a karmic or some sort of reason behind that. And I'm going to choose to make that the reason and focus on that. Carmy is working at it. Like, he goes to Al-Anon meetings and he is trying to unpack a lot of things. And I'm wondering, Kevin, your thoughts on like, do you think as he continues to try to pursue this excellence and this star, the Michelin star, do you think he's going to spend less time on the Al-Anon meetings and talking with Natalie? Do you think he's going to spend less time dealing with that? Or do you think he's recognizing, look, I got to stop smoking. I got to take better care of myself. Cause now I'm like, Sydney's like, hey, you're cutting out smoking. Why? Oh, because I need to be more efficient and it's a waste of time. It's not because of my health and because I'm going to be better in the long run because I'm going to quit smoking. It's all about efficiency. And I'm just worried that when Marcus is he's going through this grieving process and Carmy's putting his hand on his shoulder and saying like, hey, you got to deal with it. I'm not so sure he's totally dealing with it in ways that he should. It's only in the through the lens of what makes success for this restaurant.
Well, I mean, I think you could argue possibly that subconsciously isn't putting the star as sort of the aspiration of the goal a pretext to not doing sort of the emotional work of grieving or working through your bullshit or figuring out what it is that causes you to sabotage, a wonderful relationship, right? I think you could argue that, okay, you need a pretext to stop going to Al-Anon, if that indeed happens. I have no idea if it is going to happen, right? But a good one, because if you stop doing the work you need to do to become an emotionally healthier and happier person, you better have a good reason for stop doing that, right? And one reason would be is I can't leave the kitchen because we have 9 new dishes tonight, right? Especially if you tell yourself subconsciously or even act, hey, that's a noble pursuit because getting the star will, hey. So there's a theory of mine that would go like this, right? Which is, those talking and the Al-Anon meetings and all that other bullshit. No, that's not going to help me make peace with Mikey's death. What will help me make peace with Mikey's death, if I'm being honest with myself, is getting a freaking star, right? Is turning his restaurant into an unqualified success. That's the thing I can do for Mikey's legacy. To which I would say to Carmy, or somebody else would say to Carmy, like, no, that's for you.
Yeah.
You're actually, you're using Mikey's, honoring Mikey's memory. You're using that as a convenient excuse to do something that honors really your vanity.
It's so self-interested.
isn't it great when you can do something you want to do and write it off as honoring somebody else's memory? Right? Now, you have a more unfavorable view of the character than I do. Like, I like Carmy more than you do, the way you like Richie more than I do, right?
Mikey didn't want to do the bear.
No, of course not.
So how is that a tribute to Mikey when it was the thing he didn't want to do?
All right, so I'll play theory of mind again, right? Like, so Carmy might say, yeah, this restaurant, literally, dude, you were orchestrating drug deals in the freaking alley to save yourself from financial ruin. You were living with our psychotic mother. How is it honoring you? Basically, taking something you poured and did all the early work in, that you sustained and treaded water, and I'm going to make it a place that actually doesn't force people to do those things, that actually is self-sustaining and a success. And you provided sort of you provided the bones, and I'm kind of going to make it whole. And I think that's how he would say it. I'm not saying that's correct. I'm saying,
yeah.
One of the reasons this show is so beautifully rich is that we can play a theory of mind all day, right? Like, you can't do this on shows where the characters aren't well drawn. I think we have enough understanding of these characters' psyches, and what's so brilliant about it is, like, we're 3 episodes into the season, right? 2 of these episodes have, by and large, in some ways, 303, Doors is very much a companion to the first episode. In some ways, it's like that meme on the internet, right? Like how it started versus how it's going. Mm-hmm. 301, how it started for Carmy. 303, how it's going. Right? Like, in some ways, the first and third episodes are really companion pieces. 302, I wouldn't even call it a bridge, because I don't think it bridges anything specifically. It's just more of an interlude. Right. But 301 and 303, how it started for Carmy, how it's going for Carmy. Right. And, by the way, the music is really, I have to be honest, Tom, I'm not a big needle drop guy. Again, give me the diegetics of The Wire. That's kind of my thing. It's one of the things that kind of a little bit annoys me about. I like an old fashioned soundtrack. This season, between the Eddie Vedder cover and to kind of introduce you to the regular folk of culinary Chicago, the opening credits. I think one of my favorite opening credit sequences of all time. I mean, just fantastic. And I'm not even a Pearl Jam guy. Like, I'm the rare Gen Xer who's like, I don't know, give me Soundgarden any day of the week over Pearl Jam. But it's so wonderful. And then, I mean, to do episode 3, and it's like, oh, you're doing, like, we're going to do some Mendelssohn, we're going to do some Haydn, we're going to do some friggin', I think the closing credits are La Traviata.
Symphonic orchestras. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I most of the stuff I didn't recognize, but some of it I did. And it was just sort of like, kitchen is ballet in some respects, right? But, it was an interesting choice too. But I'm really enjoying.
Tina calls him Jeffrey Ballet. Yep.
Tina's in trouble, man. Tina's in a slump.
Yeah.
Tina's come out of the box. She got the good contract, but she's poor Tina, like, can't do the Wagyu. She is clearly overwhelmed. That is probably a product of inexperience more than any personal deficiency. But, they're kind of setting her up as well-intentioned a failure in the kitchen as anybody.
I mean, in Mad Men, there's so many just like slapstick humor moments, just real comedic moments in the workplace, in the office, that are genuinely just some of the funniest scenes on television. Neil bringing it in the same way Tina's kind of in over her head, but Neil bringing out the mirepoix, the broth,
the mirepoix,
going out and then pouring it and then coming back in. I died. I thought that was hysterical. It was like, why are you holding this out here? You're supposed, and then you just realize that they're all kind of swimming in the deep end, right? They're all like Tina, Sydney, Rich, they're all swimming in the deep end. The only one who's in their comfort zone is Carmy. And so I think Neil, where he's now a server or trying to be a server and just doing it backwards. It reminds me of the first night of Yardbird in Miami Beach. Jeff McGinnis, who's a former Top Chef contestant, they opened up Yardbird right down the street from me. And it's this Southern comfort restaurant. And Alice and I went for the first night. We knew that we were going in for, it's never a good idea to go for the first night. It's always a disaster, just like on this show. And they served Allison's wine in a carafe. And then she was like, I'm sorry, I might need a wine glass. We need a couple wine glasses here. And the server was like, no, that's the way that the chef wants it to be served, is in a carafe. And some other server overheard that and just turns and goes, "I'll get you your wine glasses. That is actually not what the chef wants." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." For a moment, I was like, is this a new trend in fine dining that you're supposed to drink in a carafe rather than in the wine glass?" And it just goes to show that like sometimes the servers are they're doing it for the first time. And I was a server in high school, and it's scary fucking work. It's hard work, especially when there's a new menu every day and you got Carmy and Richie yelling in the background. So I felt for Tina, I felt for Neil. But that was just, I loved that moment where the cinematography of that, where they've done this now a couple times in a couple episodes, where you're following from behind Neil as he goes out from the kitchen and into the dining room, and then following back in there. It's a cool shot, and I just loved that scene. I just had to make note of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, levity has always been an important part of this show. So much of what they're doing visually, narratively, kind of relies on abandoning that for large swaths. I mean, there was nothing in that Trent Reznor tracked episode that is going to allow for any kind of levity, right? And you don't want it to. I mean, you don't want it to break the consciousness that we're experiencing. And it is one thing I appreciated. I mean, it's going to look, the show is trying to balance tonally a lot of different things. I mean, again, we talked about sort of the oddness that this is classified as a comedy in awards season when it is so clearly a dark, brooding show much of the time. I mean, it is kind of ridiculous that it is classified as a comedy.
Yeah.
Strictly, and I think largely because the episodes tend to be around 30 minutes, and that's what we think of as comedy. A drama is 1 hour, right? But it is tonally, I mean, this is both my excitement for the rest of the season, and you and I are by and large watching it in real time. I mean, I imagine a lot of the folks listening here have kind of binged it. I've neither had the opportunity from a traveling standpoint to just kind of sit in front of my TV, but also I'm kind of enjoying doing this with you episode by episode. But I think one thing I'm very curious to see is just, it's a lot to break off. A show that wants to be both a brooding drama about a tortured guy's consciousness and wants to be a comedy about a bunch of goofballs working in a Chicago restaurant trying to make it a Michelin star place when they're serving Italian beef a year ago. That's funny. Like, it's Cheers in many ways, right? Like they want it to be, there's certain romance to it. They want it to be kind of a real character-based piece, which is different than being a piece about consciousness, right? Like it's not, episode 1 was very much a mood poem. You could argue that episode 3 was a little bit as well, but like doing character drama is a different thing. Like, we haven't seen a lot of scenes where, people are expressing their vulnerabilities or revealing their vulnerabilities, right? We've seen some arguments again that we've seen in the past. And I think you and I were frustrated by that. But we haven't seen, hey, we're 3 episodes in, and at some point, presumably, he's going to encounter Claire.
Yeah.
I'm looking for it, right? But they haven't chosen to do that yet, right? And again, I respect that choice very much. But the thing I'm both excited, but also realize the show has 3 episodes in. My evaluation is the show has set itself up a very high degree of difficulty. The ability to sustain the brooding and the drama and the workplace comedy and the character development required to kind of push a show forward. To say nothing of, hey, the existential dread of, will this thing even survive, right? And they are starting to set up, hey, you're spending $11,000 on butter and stop buying all this fancy shit.
The rare Transylvanian 5-titted goat.
Oh God, that's such a great line. Oliver Platt, God bless Oliver Platt.
Is he the best? He's so great. Uncle Jimmy, and he's such a great actor.
One of my favorite little exchanges ever in early West Wing, or even Midwest Wing, was, he played the general counsel for a season during the sort of potential impeachment, or he's, hiding the MS diagnosis. Is at some point, Allison Janney, another just absolute one of the great gifts to television and acting in general, comes in classic Sorkin-esque, is kind of carrying herself in that sort of funny Noel Coward dialogue sort of way. And he just looks at her and says, CJ, in my entire history as a person, I've never been charmed by anybody. And it's just this wonderful delivery of a line. And it's funny because it's very self-referential of Sorkin himself, right? Like CJ's talking that Sorkin talk where I'm going to be cute and witty. And he's just like, I've never been charmed in my entire life. I've never been charmed by anybody. And he played it completely deadpan. And Oliver Platt is just such a treasure and such a beautiful piece of casting. They could have totally screwed that up, and they instead found the perfect person.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. One order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
Experience a membership that backs your business journey with American Express Business Platinum. When you pay with membership rewards points for all or part of an eligible flight booked with a qualifying airline through Amex Travel, you can get 35% of those points back, up to 1 million points back per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
I want to ask you this because it is a workplace drama, but there's also, is Carm, is he an anti-hero in the same way that like Tony Soprano and Walter White, Don Draper were? Because we just mentioned that Claire hasn't been a part really of the first 3 episodes, aside from like little flashback flickers. Because I do think that like Don Draper, you got to see him at home with Betty and his daughter. You got to see him with his many girlfriends. You got to see Walter White at home with his son and Skylar. You got to see Tony Soprano with Carmela and his daughter and son. And you got a lot of that depth of character and character development from those family interactions and understanding how they're different at home versus when he's at the office, right? Do you think this show needs that for Carm? Do you think the show needs a Claire to draw that out of their main character? Or would you argue that Carmy isn't the main character? He's just the face of the show.
No, I think he is the main character. I think he's different than those anti-heroes in a very just basic way, which is Tony Soprano and Walter White were like killing people and poisoning people, right? Like they were true criminals. I mean, they were not just amoral, they were immoral.
Mm-hmm.
Draper, I think you could argue, is almost there, right? Like he doesn't ever kill anybody. Although you could argue, the thing that that torments him is that he did, right? Like, through just fear and carelessness, right? But he's doing some bad shit, right? Like he's sleeping around to the point where his poor 14-year-old daughter walks in on him boning another woman, right? Like in the kitchen. And, Carmy, look, we don't know everything about Carmy. Carmy's greatest crimes right now are a proclivity for self-destruction, which you could argue certainly hurts the people in his life, but not fatally. He's toxic in the kitchen at really stressful moments to the point where he's kind of an HR case, right? But, it's interesting. Because I don't know, and one could argue that, okay, this is the problem with, I don't know if you read that really interesting, I thought, column in the New York Times a couple months ago about all TV is mid right now, right? Like, what is it? It all looks good and we enjoy it at the moment, but we forget about it the minute we watch it. It's well casted, it's well directed, it looks good, but it doesn't stick. You and I could talk for hours about Mad Men episodes that literally aired 15 years ago, but there's nothing about today's television. And I think one of the reasons you and I love The Bear so much is no. We will remember fishes and we will remember forks. Like as good a back-to-back as anything Deadwood or The Sopranos or The Wire or Mad Men or any of the sort of classically the canonical shows for guys like us, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think you ask a really good question because I don't know if Carmine, I wouldn't say his is a more interior life because I think Don Draper perfected the sort of construction of interior character. But he hasn't, he hasn't named the crimes of Carmy. Name the crimes of Carmy, Tom, I would ask you. He's not cooking meth.
No, he's not cooking meth. He's not whacking guys. I guess you're right. He's more Don Draper in the sense that he's not murdering people left and right. But I also, if he's the face of the show or the main character, I just want some more depth. I just want to know more about him. And if the more about him is he likes to draw and that he was an introvert and didn't go to parties, I need more than that. I need Claire. I need something to draw more, texture to Carmy, because that's why I feel like I'm gravitating much more to Sydney and Richie as the main characters of the show, because I don't know how much I can invest in Carmy, because it does seem like we're on the same treadmill every episode. And one thing I will say, I think the road he's going on right now is a road that he has to go down because there's no other road. Once you've burned the boats, the whole Pat Riley line of in a game 7, you burn the boats, because in wartime, when you go up onto the shore, you got to go in there not worrying about death. You burn the boats. And that's what Carmy did. When he swore off Richie and repeatedly called him a fucking loser, assaulting him verbally through, as Richie points out, through a vault. Notably, you did that while you were, sequestered in a vault. Good job there, Carmy. What a coward. But once he does that unknowingly does that to Claire, I don't think he has any other recourse than to go fucking all in on the restaurant, because you've told yourself that narrative that I don't have time for joyful pursuits and pursuits of happiness
or amusement.
And so he's almost, by doing this, by throwing himself into the restaurant and these non-negotiables and getting the star and redoing the menu every day, it's almost like he's trying to fulfill a narrative that he's built up accidentally because he didn't know Claire was on the other side. And maybe he has to see that unravel for him to come at peace and realize, you know what? I'm a human being and I'm going to burn out and I'm going to be self-destructive, and I care about other people around me. I care about you, Natalie. I care about you, Sydney. I care about you, the facts. So maybe he does need to, destroy himself in order for him to rebuild again. So I don't like watching it. I got to be honest. I don't like watching him go down that road. It's not pleasant for me. And there's only so much of the brooding kind of hamster wheel that we're going with Carmy, where I'm like, all right, we need the crash and burn already. Cause I'm like, we've seen this for the first 2 seasons and I'm ready for something new. I'm ready for a different turn. I wanted the needle dropping. So is this a thing? Is this a thing that like some shows they get off on pairing each episode or each scene with a fucking kick-ass song, and it's almost become a game within the game? I've always liked the fact that the show has little nods to Chicago, whether it's Eddie Vedder, who grew up in Evanston.
Liz Phair's Whip Smart playing when they opened the restaurant was one of my favorite, as a guy who kind of loves Chicago music scene of the Gen X variety. Like it was wonderful to hear like Liz Phair in the restaurant opening. I mean, that was fantastic.
Yes. There's a lot of Wilco, a lot of R.E.M, which I think R.E.M's, isn't that a Georgia band?
That is Athens, Georgia 40 Watt Club. That is the music of my childhood.
But they do a lot of R.E.M on this show, even though it's a Southern folk band.
So it's funny. I think the show is Eddie Vedder, right? I think the show, it is a shrine to Gen X music.
It is.
I think that's what's going on here.
And so you want more or you want more of that.
No, I don't know. So I think I really wrestle with the angels on music drops, because on needle drops, because on one hand, I'm a music head. Like I am, again, a generationally like I come, one of my issues with your generation, Tom, is you don't understand like the value of a real album and music. I think one of the, I think I'm part of the last generation where like music was appreciated a very specific way. It's not that people younger than us don't appreciate music, or they appreciate it in a different way. So part of me loves that, right? Like, there's a part of me that I think like I remember when Dawson's Creek did this, like 25 years ago, CW was trying to kind of, or the WB rather, I'm sorry, I'm getting my marginal network, my marginal linear networks mixed up of the late 90s, where it was like, what do younger viewers want? Well, they want to hear more. They would like the TV show to be like a music video, right? And someone somewhere intelligently or unintelligently, however you come down, decided that, right? And so then now HBO kind of kept it very pure, right? They did soundtracks. I mean, you listen to Deadwood. I mean, I'm rewatching Deadwood right now with my partner because he'd never seen it. And I'm just sort of jonesing for like 20-year-old great prestige television right now. And I just forgot how fucking good it is.
Never seen it either, by the way.
Tom, do yourself a favor and watch it. It's 2 seasons plus a movie. It's exquisite. It's freaking American Shakespeare. I mean, that's sort of my view on Deadwood. But the point is that I think, needle drops became sort of a very much, I think, a hallmark of a certain brand of television. And now my theory is the algorithm at Netflix or wherever has suggested that viewers do respond to it, that whether it's because it provides propulsion, whether it keeps them there, whether because they're looking down at their screens while they're watching, but they hear something, like, I don't know. And I think a very sophisticated music supervisor in Hollywood could probably tell you why there's so many needle drops. I find them a little bit excessive. Yet I think when they work, they work. What I loved what the Bears done this season, actually, I mean, hey, I think early on, it's not unfair to say, I don't know that I'm going to enjoy season 3 of this show as much as I enjoyed season 2, which was sort of just one of those miracle seasons. That said, I will say this. I like how the music is working in this season a lot more. I loved a singular soundtrack for episode 1. I love that episode 2 was much more stripped down, right? You got the great Eddie Vedder opening credit sequence.
I think it closed out with Radiohead. Yeah.
As we say, this is now a temple for Gen X music. And then episode 3, let's just do this entire suite of classical numbers, some operatic, some balletic, throw some Haydn in there. I think I love how they're using music, but there's a little too many needle drops for my taste in contemporary television, but I also recognize that I am old and I'm just old.
So Josh Sr., who is an executive producer who works with Storer to do the music for The Bear, there's an interview in Salon that I read.
Oh, cool. I'll check it out.
That he talks about it. And it's really cool. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Do you remember in Fishes, they were deciding what would Dee Dee have playing in her house? What would be some of the songs that Donna would have in her house? And so Josh had decided with Storer, let's do George Harrison, I've Got My Mind Set on You. And the funny thing about that, Kevin, is so when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Weird Al Yankovic. I just loved this. When I was 8 years old, Bad Hair Day album where, instead of Gangster's Paradise, it's Amish Paradise. I started buying up all of Weird Al Yankovic's CDs. And one of the songs that he did was, this song is just 6 words long. This song is just 6 words long. This song is just 6. And I was like, oh, that's a funny song. And then years later, I grow up and I hear George Harrison's I've Got My Mind Set on You. And my mind just blew. I was just like, oh, that's the song that Weird Al was parodying. I didn't realize that. And what's so funny about it is Weird Al was noticing that song is just so repetitive and his song is just 6 words long. It doesn't have any lyrics. And that's what's playing at the house when they're going through the most stressful kind of returning to the same tropes in the family. And it's stressful. And to me, I loved that they were playing George Harrison's I Got My Mind Set on You because it is such a repetitive, stressful song. For me, knowing, hey, this song is just 6 words long. It just repeats and repeats and repeats. So I love that about it. Josh Sr. had said that he had a 45 track or whatever you call it. I'm showing my age here. That he had that song on repeat in his bedroom and he would jump on the bed to George Harrison's I've Got My Mind Set on You. And he just loved that he could bring it into the show not in a vanity play of we're going to play some George Harrison here. But I loved that in Fishes, that was one of the songs that was playing in the house because it's perfect. It's perfect for that. So Kevin, I really do like the music on this show. And it's not navel gazing in the same way that on Westworld, I feel like in Westworld, did you watch Westworld?
I watched the first season and enjoyed it, kind of tuned out the second season, as I often do.
They would do these instrumentals of pop cultures or pop hits. And it was almost how can we slow it down? And then oh, we're going to do Eagle Eye Cherry, or maybe I'm thinking of a different show. But sometimes it can be kind of navel gazy and just okay, we get it. You're making a very serious rendition of a Britney Spears song. But I think the musical choices have been excellent on this show. I love the Taylor Swift love story when Richie's flying through the city, driving fast, when he's finally, blossomed and become the butterfly that he wants to be. I love that. And the crescendo of that song is great. And he and his daughter listen to Taylor Swift a lot. He got her tickets to Taylor Swift. And so it holds a special place in his heart. So I love that nod. So yeah, Eddie Vedder, all of it. I've been really liking kind of listening to the song and trying to go and Google it. What is that song? And seeing the tie to Chicago. That's always nice.
There is this thing that happens, I think, with quote prestige television, right? And I think there are cynical people who would argue. I imagine there are people, and again, I'm kind of a bit removed from the quote cultural conversation or the water cooler thing. I just because I tend to not be on social media, and I've been traveling and haven't been like at a dinner table where people are talking about the bear. But I think there's always an argument that once a prestige show buys into its status as a prestige show, it gets a little navel-gazey, or it starts to put a greater premium on artistry at the expense of good old-fashioned entertainment, right? In some ways, it becomes Carmy, right? It wants to do a new dish every night rather than just, hey, I mean, the best example against this is the Breaking Bad, right? It's a show that even while it was gaining prestige, just said, you know what, we're gonna give you plot that by virtue of behavior and characters' actions really fill in character. We're not going to, other than our bottle episode of The Fly, right? We'll give you one of those, but keep the main. They're a Pat Riley show, right? Keep the main thing, and so
first 3 episodes, Kevin, none of them are kind of up there with forks and fishes, and maybe that's a good thing.
I'm with you. I think the first episode is just kind of a beautiful mood poem, but you're right. It's a mood poem. That's what it is. It's not we're not really, we're learning things, obviously, because we're getting backstory. And it's funny. I talked to one friend who just absolutely thought it was one of the most exquisite hours of television he's ever seen. This is a friend who's also, just loves food and restaurants and the Easter eggs that were planted in there were designed almost, for him and for you and me as well. But yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of my closing thought is that I'm as somebody who's watching it kind of one at a time, on pace with our recording. I'm really curious to see how the show balances all the things it wants to be, including the fan service stuff, including the comedic Chicago stuff, including hey, this is a prestige show. And as a prestige show, we are going to try things narratively and experiment in ways that might repel parts of our audience, because that's what prestige shows are supposed to do if you don't take risks. Atlanta's a great example of this, where, I mean, they are taking incredible risks. Often they work. And boy, when they work, you're just grateful for the show's mere existence. And then sometimes they swing and miss. And I think watching what the show does, all the while trying to kind of keep us engaged in whether or not this restaurant is going to succeed, which is, ultimately kind of, I think, the most basic question of the show, at least as it resides in the premise and the conceit of the show.
Yeah. And if for it to succeed, Kevin, I think Carmy has to get out of his own way. And there's one line from the second episode, where I wrote it down. Maybe we should do that. What your favorite line is from each episode.
I don't think we're going to better the 5-titted goat.
The rare Transylvanian 5-titted goat.
Yeah.
What butter are you using? But I think my favorite line is Sydney in episode 2 saying, I feel like I've been here an hour. Or maybe it's the am I stroking, just to add to that, just like, this is so unpleasant with the lights flickering. But I do think that the line that Sydney says, I think you've managed in a miraculous way to make this about yourself, talking to Carmy, is really what the issue is here. Is this Carmy doing this for the success of the restaurant and the glory of the whole team, or is he doing this for himself? And I would argue he's doing it for himself. And maybe in the long run, that will be better for the restaurant, that he kind of realizes and he crashes and burns and realizes, you know what? Sydney, you're right. Richie, you're right. Natalie, you're right. And he kind of gets out of his own way. That's the real tension for me going forward.
For Tom Haberstroh, producer Anthony Mays, this is Kevin Arnovitz, and this is Pack Your Knives.